What up? What up?
Happy Friday, everyone.
No, happy Monday. It's
Happy
the
Monday. No,
24th. Oh,
24th. It's Friday.
it's Friday. Can you tell that it's the end of the day? It's currently 3 p.m. We have what
Been a
have we
day.
done today?
It's been a long day.
A lot.
This morning was just not my morning. I had a dentist appointment at 8. There were 3 appointments at 8. The other 2 people got there before me, but I got there at 8 o'clock. And then there was no receptionist there. And so this lady comes out, she's like, "Who was here first?" And so the other 2 people got to go back. And then 30 minutes later, mind you, I have Taylor with me. And Taylor's like, "Mom, I'm bored. I'm bored." And I'm like, "Taylor, just please be patient and sit there." And so finally got back there. And then I have Invisalign and one of my teeth is not tracking with the rest of them. So they're going to have to manually move it and put this, I don't even know. She's basically like, "You're going to have a gap between this tooth and this tooth." And I was like, "I'm sorry. What?" You're going to put a gap between my teeth. And she's like, "You won't really be able to tell." And I was like, "Okay, I am trusting you." But that's going to have to happen in December.
Oh my
So
gosh.
anyways, I didn't get out of there until I don't know, 9 o'clock. I usually try and get to Liz's by 9:45. I'm an hour away from Liz's. I got stuck by a freight train on the way there and it's raining. It was just
I know this morning was
not my
shitty.
day.
Marcus was up, or not Marcus, Ethan was up at 4. And then just so we're trying not to give him milk because he's a hunk and he doesn't need more milk in the middle of the night. So we're like, okay, the pediatrician's like, to get him off the night feeds, do water. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, that's easy for you to say when your child is not screaming bloody murder at you. Because this kid is all right. If you're dealing with water retention, you're waking up puffy, your ankles or your wrists are really swollen, or you can't get your rings off, and maybe you're even dragging throughout the day, no matter how much water you drink, there's actually a good chance that you're not actually hydrating properly.
Exactly, because water alone is not enough. You need electrolytes, you need sodium, potassium, magnesium, because those things actually pull water into your cells. Otherwise, you're basically just flushing it out and wondering why you're still tired, you're still bloated, and you're still sluggish.
But here's the thing, most electrolyte supplements out there aren't helping you in any way because a lot of them contain things like natural flavors, food dyes, and maltodextrin, which can irritate your gut. And these things can also spike your blood sugar when you're trying to heal.
That's why we both started using Buoy. It's super simple, just trace minerals and electrolytes in liquid form. No flavors, no colors, no sugar, no sweeteners, and you squeeze it into whatever you are drinking. Water, coffee, tea, smoothies, you name it.
And it's clinically backed by science too. So studies have shown that Buoy helps you hydrate better, 64% better in fact, and that's data coming from key blood and urinary markers, not just marketing fluff. And honestly, you can feel the difference. I've had many clients tell me their digestion's improved, they have less headaches, and they're better energy throughout the day.
And Buoy isn't just for people that go to the gym all the time and sweat a bunch. They actually offer a 35% lifetime discount for anyone that's struggling with chronic illnesses. Things like POTS, Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, chronic migraines, and every autoimmune condition. They're really committed to making better hydration accessible to people who need it most.
I actually throw it in my coffee every morning because it's such an easy upgrade. You don't even taste it, but you're definitely gonna notice if you miss it.
If you're tired of playing hydration roulette and want something that actually supports your body, you've got to try Buoy. It's honestly one of the simplest ways to feel better faster.
So chill, but when he is hungry, you're gonna feed him, or everyone in the vicinity is gonna know that he's, upset and angry. So, anyways, yeah, I basically feel like I've been up since 4, and it was cold and it was rainy. We literally, this is Illinois weather, right? Went from amazing weekend, sunny, super nice, to fall hit fast. And I was like, well, it's gonna be a pumpkin spice kind of day, which I'm excited for our Just Ingredients pumpkin spice coffee to come in, or pumpkin spice protein to come in so we can put it into the coffee.
Yes.
So we'll see. But
Yes.
anyways, it is Friday. It is middle of fall, and we are going to talk about something that you should probably pay attention to if you are doing hormones or, want to understand why you don't feel your hormones, because this is a big player. So we're going to talk about sex hormone binding globulin today and hormone insensitivity. So I actually just did a reel. By the time that we air this, it will be live, but I was talking about secondary hypothyroidism and cellular hypothyroidism. So your TSH, your T4 can look completely fine. Heck, even your free T3 can look great and optimal. we talked about this today, right? With Vince and one of my clients, like this is total cellular insensitivity. So it does not matter what is going on in the bloodstream. What matters is what's going on in your cells. And so when we think about other hormones in the body, the sex hormone binding globulin is really important because this essentially can bind up your testosterone so that you don't feel it. And you're going to see that maybe your total testosterone is adequate, but your free testosterone is low. That's because sex hormone binding globulin is soaking that up basically like a sponge. So this is made in the liver. It is a glycoprotein, and this binds sex steroids, especially DHT, which is a potent form of testosterone. But that turns into testosterone and then can aromatize or turn into estradiol. Was just listening to Dr. Jockers. He'll be on our podcast soon. He had a reel came out that was talking about man boobs and insulin resistance, and why when you look at a male, you can tell they have low testosterone levels because they have insulin resistance and they're aromatizing, meaning they're turning testosterone into estrogen, and that gives them more of those man boobs. This can bind a little bit to progesterone, but not as extensively as it does to free testosterone and estradiol. And downstream effects, it can have effects on your hair, your skin, your mood, libido, endometrium, and metabolism. So it's really interesting. And we always try to run this when we're looking at a full hormone panel, because again, if you go to your OBGYN, they might run your hormones. If you're lucky, I don't know. But I've not seen SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, come back because guess what? My clients come back and say, my doctor didn't know what it was, so they didn't add it on. Just kind of like my client today, who her doctor, her OBGYN, someone supposed to be trained in hormones. I mean, I hope that they're kind of trained in hormones because they deal with fertility. But sadly, they're not. And so she asked her doctor for progesterone because she's been doing compounded progesterone. She feels really good on it. She likes to get it covered by insurance. And her doctor says, I don't prescribe progesterone, but I can give you prometrium. Prometrium is micronized progesterone. And I was like, so it's great. She's going to write you a script, but she doesn't know what she's writing it for. Like, maybe we should give her a call and let her know that, hey, this is in fact micronized progesterone. So you do prescribe progesterone.
I often have to write our clients what they're going to say to the doctor, research to provide, like equip them because otherwise you just get written off and it's really unfortunate. Um so yeah, I the other thing interesting thing that sex hormone binding globulin is probably one of the more telling markers about a lot of other aspects of your health too, because it has a lot to do with correlation of metabolic health, and liver health. So it acts as like a hepatokine biomarker, which is, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And what I think happens ultimately is with obesity, with insulin resistance, even with just like mildly dysfunctional metabolic health, you do start to accumulate these fat deposits on your liver. High triglycerides will start to cause that. And so it makes it harder for the liver to essentially produce sex hormone binding globulin. So we see when sex hormone binding globulin is low, it often correlates with obesity, insulin resistance, liver dysfunction. We're looking at typically around a 60 to an 80 is like a sweet spot for sex hormone binding globulin. Anything over 100, we're starting to get high. Anything below a 60, we're starting to see correlations with other issues. So it's essentially your thermostat. Like it's the thermostat for the hormones. It's kind of the sensitivity dial. It essentially controls how much is circulating and available for your tissues to feel. So you could have completely normal levels of hormones, but if your sex hormone binding globulin is 160, you might not feel the effects of your hormones very well. So only that unbound fraction, which is a very small amount, like a couple percent, is actually felt by the body. So what we want to talk about mostly today is what causes it to be high. I see it being high more as a problem. When it's low, it's usually low as a byproduct. Like it's low as a byproduct of inflammation, insulin resistance, liver dysfunction, things of that nature. And when you fix those, it comes up. When it's high, it gives you kind of have to figure out why it's high because that gives you then the clue of how you're going to fix it, right? And I've gotten this question multiple times in the past couple of weeks around like what to do if my sex hormone binding globulin is high. Why is it high? So let's talk about why, the whys. Number one is hypothyroidism. So essentially, when there's excess of any hormones, there is excess of estrogen, there's excess of testosterone, there's excess of thyroid hormone, you are going to see it affect the genetics that essentially stimulate hepatic synthesis of sex hormone binding globulin. So when there is too much T3, AKA a lot of times medication, right? Someone is over medicated with T3, or if someone has Graves' disease. I have a Graves client that we saw this very clearly when she came in. Her T3 was very high, her sex hormone binding was very high, and her testosterone was very high, which is something else that happens with Graves' disease and hyperthyroidism, which is very interesting. But either way, when you can manage that and bring it down, those receptors essentially attach to thyroid response elements on the sex hormone binding SHBG. We're just going to say SHBG moving forward. It's a total mouthful, guys. These receptors attach to thyroid response elements on the SHBG gene promoter, and it's increased its transcription, aka too much of the hormone changes the genetic essentially expression of this, and it causes it to produce more sex hormone binding globulin. So it happens the same with estrogen, specifically oral estrogen. So
Mhm.
this is what we see in the research: is that oral estrogen, because it has to bypass the liver, is more influential in affecting sex hormone binding globulin. So if you are noticing, I'm on oral estrogen, I don't feel as good as I want to feel, you may want to consider going to a injection, troche,
Cream.
cream. All transdermal is probably the least affinity for elevating SHBG. But we see and that's why birth control also will rise SHBG. Pretty, like, when someone's on birth control, we see it in like the 300s.
Really crazy.
Yeah.
So what's interesting here, I'd love to know your opinion if you've seen this, because I've seen testosterone creams drive sex hormone binding globulin up very high,
Yep.
but I don't see the same with testosterone injections.
I think that creams are dosed very high, and I
Because
think that they get into the bloodstream very quickly and can raise. I personally think that creams cause very big highs and lows.
Mhm.
It's just because like we have people test after they put their cream on in the morning, and their levels are in like the 700s. It's
Mm,
insane, and so that's not necessarily, again, what you're feeling, right? That's
mhm,
what is in the bloodstream. It's bound up. So that's why I think the creams cause that, because I think if you notice, like, creams are dosed
mhm.
f- 10 to 15 milligrams a day. Like, that's how much you're taking in an injection per week.
Yeah, and part of this would be, so for example, we talk about this with peptides, right? You're getting the most systemic effect from an injection. But with oral, even with the, I'm never gonna say it properly, but it's a mouthful. It's the new Eli Lilly oral orlogrofron that is
Mhm.
that's probably butchering it. We're talking about that on another podcast coming up, and I'm like, I need to practice saying this. I heard Hunter Williams talking about it,
Genetics.
and he's like, I keep messing this up. So just know what we're talking about here. But that you have to go higher doses when you're doing oral or transdermal, because you're not getting that systemic action in the bloodstream right away. Like, you
Mhm.
have to surpass the skin, you have to surpass the gut. Right. And so that would make sense in terms of that. Okay. Other things that can drive this up is liver disease or cirrhosis, right? So again, the liver creates sex hormone binding globulin. So altered hepatic function, changes in hormone metabolism is going to give you some shifts here. Some forms of liver disease, especially chronic and cirrhotic stasis, are associated with increased sex hormone binding globulin. We would also look at low body mass index, or those who have been dieting for long periods of time. Generally, when people come in and they say, and they're not on any hormones, they say, I eat enough, adequate. As soon as I see that SHBG over 100, I'm like, yeah, nope, you've been underfed for a long
Or
period of
low carb.
time. Low carb, fasting, anorexic, some of those just chronic dieters. So even though they may think that they're eating enough, they're actually not compared to where they need to be. So the body is stressed, right? And so this lower fat may reduce that inhibitory signal. So insulin in this situation to, you know, impact sex hormone binding globulin production. As we age, sex hormone binding globulin tends to increase, partly due to, again, the decrease in sex steroids, metabolic changes. When we look at higher sex hormone binding globulin, and we know that it's because of other therapeutic functions, not just age, there's things that you can do if you see it creeping up too high, like boron, like 12 milligrams a day. That's been shown in the research to help bring this down. But sometimes it's one of those things where if you're not too high, like I would say above 110, 120, and you know that you're on a testosterone cream, for example, maybe you're going to let that ride out because
Mhm.
you just know that there's a reason that this is happening. Otherwise, if you're not doing those things, then I think it is wise to start to try to lower that, eat adequate, intake, make sure that you're getting your insulin and blood sugar in check, and that you're supporting your detox pathways. And most importantly, supporting the liver and all the, different things that the liver needs to do in terms of methylation, glucuronidation, sulfation, like all these different enzymatic functions that have to happen in your body for this insane symphony to function the way that God, designed us without having such blocks in your hormones and the way that you feel your hormones.
Yeah. So we already kind of talked about reasons that it can be low hyperinsulinemia because insulin suppresses sex hormone binding globulin, which is why people that are in keto or chronically fasting have really high SHBG. And so if you are never producing insulin, and we see this, like when people come in and their insulin's a 2, their sex hormone binding globulin is usually like 150, 170. They don't feel great. They don't have good energy. And so you need insulin. So typically you need to reverse diet someone in those cases. And then we also see obesity. So adiposity is strongly and inversely correlated with sex hormone binding globulin, liver fat, intra-abdominal fat, androgen excess. So androgenic hormones, testosterone, DHT, downregulate SHBG expression. So we'll talk about this later, but this is why we sometimes will use in specific cases where we cannot get it down otherwise, we will use oxandrolone, which is a androgenic hormone. Hypothyroidism and low thyroid hormone, because again, like I said, hyperthyroid stimulates it. So low thyroid would suppress it, obviously. Excess growth hormone has been associated with lower levels, glucocorticoids. So if someone is on progestin, aka a birth control, you will see a specific progestins will lower it actually. And then genetic familial. So some people have genetic variants that predispose them to lower levels. The problem, though, like we said, is the higher levels.
Mhm.
So what can we do about it? Reverse dieting, making sure that you are stimulating insulin by bringing in carbohydrates and eating enough food will bring sex hormone binding globulin down in many cases. We talked about androgens because androgens specifically downregulate SHBG. So oxandrolone is a DHT derivative, and it is one of the strongest SHBG suppressing effects. So in these cases, when we have done everything else, when, especially in cases where we need to do fasting, we need to bring in potentially a GLP-1, we need to do a lot of autophagy work and anti-inflammatory work for a client, we will use oxandrolone for a short period of time. Oxandrolone is also known as Anavar, which gets a bad rap because it is technically a steroid. They use it in the bodybuilding world, in the non-clean bodybuilding world, to keep women really lean because it works. It really does. So that will sometimes be ran for very short periods of time. You don't want to be on it for really long periods of time because it can stress out the liver quite a bit. So low doses, short periods of time can actually be really helpful in lowering SHBG. High protein and calorie dense feeding after restriction. So basically other forms of refeeding. And then if you want to gain a bunch of fat, it'll probably lower, but we don't want to do that. So we'll stick to the boron, which has shown to have an affinity for lowering it for about in research, it's about 10%. So if it's really high, boron probably isn't going to be it.
Mhm.
Um, and if you, feed up, support thyroid, if you're hypothyroid, things of that nature. We've seen L-carnitine do some benefit for it because L-carnitine improves specifically insulin sensitivity. But how L-carnitine can work in some females is it can help with androgen receptor sensitivity. So if you improve androgen receptors and improve androgen levels, then you can as a byproduct, improve
Mhm.
sex, kind of like how oxandrolone's working more directly. L-carnitine has been seen to have some similar
Yeah, you
effects.
just need high doses of L-carnitine,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
it's one of those things where it's kind of like chicken and egg scenario and what's driving it for you.
Yeah.
And so I think this is all about testing and then addressing the entire picture, right? You don't want to just go out and be like, oh, cool, my sex hormone globulin is really high. And so I'm just going to start dosing myself up, with boron and L-carnitine and all these things. It's really about looking at the broader picture and the scope and what's impacting your liver. What do we need to do from an insulin and blood sugar perspective when you're thinking long term? Like, I don't want to have to rely on these things forever. Maybe short term, you fix it, but you're mainly fixing it or supporting it while you're fixing the underlying dysfunction. So that's what we do in our practice, obviously, with the full comprehensive blood work panel that includes all the hormones, including sex hormone binding globulin. We're looking at a ton of different markers, over 70 markers. So you can click on the link in the show notes if you're somebody who's like, man, I am tired of guessing. I don't want to throw darts at the wall anymore. I want to understand what my body is, what's going on inside my body and why I'm experiencing all of these symptoms and really understand the patterns and trends on lab work because sadly, your doctors just aren't going to. I mean, hell, they don't even know what SHBG is. So they're probably not going to be running this for you, number one. And number two, when it's high or low outside of that 60 to 80 range, be able to help you, address that and fix that. So if you want to do that with our team, the link is in the show notes. And with that, we hope that you have a fabulous weekend.